There is an island off Shetland where Christmas is on the 6th of January. Not as a quirk, not as a festival, that's just the date. They never switched calendars. There is an island off Orkney where the last two people walked out in 1974 and left the cattle behind. Nobody ever came back for them. 50 years later, those cattle are still there, wild now and classed as a breed of their own. And there is a rock 40 miles north of Lewis where, every autumn, 10 men sail out and live for 2 weeks in stone huts, hunting seabirds with poles, exactly the way their great-grandfathers did. It's illegal for everybody else in Britain. They have a license. We tell ourselves there's nowhere left to escape to, that every corner of this country has been paved, wired, signposted, and put on a website. But the sea is very good at keeping things scattered around. These islands are places the 20th century arrived at late, arrived at badly, or never really arrived at all. Some still have people on them, some don't. One of them only got electricity through the night in 2018. In this video, we're counting down 7 islands off the UK so remote the modern world never reached them. Let's start with number 7. 7. Lundy, Bristol Channel, the island that printed its own money. We're starting close to home. 12 miles off the North Devon coast, out in the middle of the Bristol Channel, Lundy is about 3 miles long and half a mile wide, and on paper it's a lovely day out. A boat from Bideford, a walk up to the lighthouse, Puffins on the cliffs, a pint at the end of it. Around 28 people live there. But Lundy has spent the last century quietly refusing to be a normal part of Britain. In 1924, a businessman called Martin Coles Harman bought the island outright and declared it a self-governing dominion of the British Empire. He designed a flag, he drew up a constitution. From 1929, he printed his own postage stamps, and then he went one step further and minted his own coins. The currency was the Puffin. You could hold a 1 Puffin piece and a half Puffin. The Crown did not find this funny. Harman was prosecuted under the Coinage Act and fined £5 in 1930. He lost the coins. He kept the stamps. And to this day, if you post a letter from Lundy, you buy a Puffin stamp and stick it on alongside the Royal Mail one, because the island still runs its own postal service. There are no cars, no streetlights. One pub, the Morisco Tavern, which stays open around the clock as the island's only public room because, for a long stretch of Lundy's history, it was the only place with reliable light. And the isolation is real. In summer you come on the supply ship. In winter, when the Bristol Channel turns, the only way on or off is a helicopter from Hartland Point. When Harman died, the island nearly went to developers. A millionaire bought it in 1969 for £150,000 and simply gave it to the nation, and it's been run ever since as a place you can stay in, not a place you can buy. Britain's smallest breakaway state didn't fail, exactly. It just got quietly folded back in and kept the paperwork. 6. Sark, Channel Islands, Europe's last feudal state. Number 6 takes us south to the Channel Islands and to something genuinely hard to believe about modern Europe. Sark is 2 square miles of clifftop with about 500 people on it. It isn't technically part of the United Kingdom at all. It's a crown dependency, which is the first odd thing about it. You arrive by ferry from Guernsey and then you get hauled up the hill from the harbour by a tractor because the road is far too steep to walk it with luggage. That tractor is the point. Sark does not allow cars, not restricted, banned, tractors, bicycles, horse-drawn carriages and battery buggies for anyone who needs one. That is the entire transport system of the island. But the cars aren't the strange part. Until 2008, Sark was run as a feudal state. Actual feudalism, a seigneur at the top holding the island from the crown, and a parliament called the Chief Pleas, made up largely of the men who held the 40 original parcels of land handed out back in 1565. If you didn't hold land, you didn't sit. It took the Reform Law of 2008 to end that and give Sark its first fully democratic election. Europe's last feudal territory made it into the 21st century by 8 years, and it has form for holding out. During the German occupation in the Second World War, the island's dame stayed put and dealt with the occupying commandant directly on her own terms for 5 years. There's no hospital, no airport. When something serious happens, you're waiting on a boat or a helicopter to Guernsey. And because there are no cars, there are no streetlights, which in 2011 earned Sark a title nowhere else on Earth held, the world's first dark sky island. An island so far behind the modern world that it accidentally ended up in front of it. 5. Swona Orkney, the village that walked away. We're into the top 5 now, and number 5 is a low green island in the Pentland Firth, that violent stretch of water between Orkney and the Scottish mainland. Getting there is the first problem. The Firth has some of the fastest tidal currents on the planet, running up to 16 knots, with named races that sailors have feared for centuries, the Merry Men of May, the Swelkie. You don't casually drop in on Swona. From a boat it looks like nothing much. A few fields, a scatter of grey buildings. The kind of island you'd sail straight past without asking a question, but those buildings aren't ruins. They're a village that was simply left. Swona was inhabited right up until 1974. The last residents were a brother and sister, and when they finally went, they didn't clear the houses out. Furniture stayed. Possessions stayed exactly where they'd been set down. 50 years on, you can still look into rooms that appear as though the family stepped outside and never came back. And they left something alive behind them. 8 cows and a bull were still on the island when the last boat pulled away. Nobody came to collect them. Nobody ever has. 5 generations later, those cattle are still out there. No vet, no feed, no handling, no shelter, no human contact at all. They've reverted to genuinely wild behavior, their own herd hierarchy, cows calving alone out in the open, the whole group moving with the weather. Because of that total isolation, they are completely disease-free, and scientists who've studied them now recognize the Swona cattle as a distinct breed in their own right, an island where the people left and the livestock became wildlife. 4. Fula, Shetland, where Christmas is in January. Alright, quick midpoint check. If you've made it this far, you're clearly the sort of person who looks at the empty bits of the map and wonders what's actually going on out there. So do me a favor, hit like, send this to whoever you genuinely move to an island with, and stick around, because the top 3 aren't quaint. They get properly hard. Now, number 4. Fula sits about 20 miles west of the Shetland mainland, out in open Atlantic water, and roughly 17 people live on it. The cliffs on the western side fall well over 1,000 feet straight into the sea. The Kaimi is one of the highest sheer sea cliffs in Britain. There's a post office, there's no shop worth the name. The ferry runs a couple of times a week when the weather allows, and the boats have to be lifted bodily out of the water by crane because there's nowhere sheltered enough to leave them floating. But the thing Fula is famous for isn't the cliffs, it's the date. In 1752, Britain switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian one, and 11 days were simply deleted from the year. Fula never made the change. It then skipped a further correction in 1900, which nudged the gap out by 1 more day. So, on Fula, Christmas Day falls on the 6th of January, and New Year falls on the 13th, not as a reenactment, not for tourists. That is genuinely when the island celebrates, and it has done, without a break, for over 270 years. And there's a strange footnote. In the 1930s, the director Michael Powell wanted to make a film about the death of an island community, the St Kilda evacuation. He wasn't allowed to film on St Kilda, so he brought a cast and crew to Fula instead, where they lived for months with no air service and barely any radio contact, and shot The Edge of the World. Britain's most famous film about an island at the end of the world was made on a different island at the end of the world, because the real one was already gone. 3. Fair Isle, the island that switched the lights off at night. We're into the top 3 now, and number 3 is regularly called the most remote inhabited island in the United Kingdom. Fair Isle sits alone in open sea, roughly halfway between Orkney and Shetland, about 24 miles from one and 27 from the other. Around 44 people live there. You probably know the name from the knitwear, which really did come from here, and which the island's women turned into a genuine income long before anybody thought to call it a brand. It has always been a place things wash up against. A ship of the Spanish Armada was wrecked here in 1588, and its crew had to be fed through a Shetland winter by an island that barely had enough for itself. It's beautiful. It's also the kind of place where a bad forecast cuts you off for a fortnight, and the ferry, the Good Shepherd, has to be winched clean out of the sea between crossings exactly like Fula's. But here's the fact that stops people. Until October 2018, Fair Isle did not have electricity at night. Power came from diesel generators and a couple of small wind turbines, and it ran to a schedule. In the late evening, the island's supply was switched off. No lights, no fridge, no charging anything until it came back on the following morning. If you wanted power overnight, you ran your own generator or you went without. It took a £3.5 million scheme, new turbines, solar panels and a bank of batteries to finally give Fair Isle a 24-hour supply. That was 2018, the same year the rest of the country was arguing about 5G, and its luck has been thin since. The bird observatory, the heart of the island's scientific life, and a serious chunk of its visitor income burned to the ground in 2019. 44 people holding a place open on the far side of a lot of weather. 2. Sulas Gia, the last seabird hunt in Europe. Number 2 isn't an island anybody lives on. It's a bare spine of rock about 40 nautical miles north of Lewis, with no soil, no shelter, and no fresh water worth the name. Its only neighbour is North Rona, 11 miles east, which had people on it until the 1840s and has been silent ever since. For 50 weeks of the year, there is nothing out on Sulajgia but gannets and Atlantic. And then, once a year, 10 men sail out to it. They come from Ness at the very northern tip of Lewis, and they go for the Guga. Young gannets taken off the cliffs with a long pole and a rope noose, working in pairs. The way it has been done for centuries, they live on the rock for about 2 weeks in dry stone bothies their predecessors built, plucking, salting and stacking the birds, sleeping in stone. This is not a reenactment, and it is not a tourist attraction. It's a food tradition that has run more or less unbroken for hundreds of years, and salted Guga is still cooked and eaten in Ness, strong, oily, closer to salt meat than to poultry, and an acquired taste even locally. It is also, for everybody else in Britain, completely illegal. Killing gannets is banned under the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981, the Nessman hunt under a specific annual license, an exemption granted to one community for one rock once a year. The quota has come down over time to around 500 birds, and the hunt has grown steadily more contested, with welfare groups arguing it should be stopped for good. It didn't run at all for several years recently, before a license was granted again. The men who go say something very simple in reply: nobody else does this anymore. They're right. It's the last working seabird harvest in Europe, the final thread of a way of life that once fed the whole North Atlantic. 1. St Kilda, the island at the end of the world. And number 1 is the island every other place on this list gets measured against. St Kilda lies 40 miles out into the Atlantic beyond the Outer Hebrides, and people lived there for thousands of years, not by farming, which the place barely permits, but by climbing. The St Kildans lived on seabirds, fulmars, gannets, puffins, taken off some of the highest sea cliffs in Britain by men who went over the edge on horsehair ropes, barefoot from childhood. They ate the birds, burned their oil for light, stuffed their mattresses with the feathers, and paid the landlord's rent in feathers too. Around the village stand roughly 1,400 cleats, small stone larders built with deliberate gaps in the walls, so the Atlantic wind blew straight through and cured the meat without salt. Every single morning, the men of the island gathered in the street visitors, called it the St Kilda Parliament. There was no chairman, nobody in charge, and no vote taken. They simply stood there and talked until the day's work was agreed, who was going on which cliff and for what. Then they went, and when they needed to reach the outside world, they made a mail boat, a message sealed inside a hollowed piece of wood, lashed to an inflated sheep's bladder for a float, thrown into the sea on a northwesterly wind. Some of them washed up in the Hebrides, some made it all the way to Norway. That was the postal service. It worked for a very long time. What broke it was contact. Steamers started bringing tourists who came to look at the islanders like an exhibit. Young people left for the mainland and didn't come back. Illness the mainland shrugged off, went through a tiny population like fire, and there was no doctor closer than a day's sailing in good weather. By 1930 there were 36 people left, and they had run out of margin. They signed a petition asking to be taken off, and on the 29th of August a Navy ship carried them away for good. Before they left, the story goes, each family laid a Bible open on the table, left a small pile of oats beside it, and banked the fire. The island still has its own wren and its own field mouse found nowhere else on Earth, and on Soe, a breed of sheep so primitive it's barely changed since the Stone Age. It's one of only a couple of dozen places on the planet that UNESCO protects for both its nature and its culture. The St Kildans weren't defeated by remoteness. They survived that for 4,000 years. They were finished off by the modern world, getting just close enough to touch them and not close enough to help. And there you have it. 7 islands off the UK where the modern world arrived, late, arrived badly, or never really arrived at all. A private kingdom that minted Puffin coins, a feudal state with no cars that became the world's first dark sky island, a village left standing with the furniture still in it, an island keeping Christmas in January, 44 people living without electricity at night until 2018, 10 men and a rock. And a community that lasted 4,000 years on seabirds and lost it in a single generation. The pattern is the same every time distance protects a place, right up until the moment it doesn't, and by then, whatever made it worth protecting has usually already gone. So we want to know, which of these would you actually spend a winter on, and which one would you not last a week on? Be honest in the comments. And if you've been to any of them, tell us the thing that never makes it into the guidebooks. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.